Hi. If you've not met me before, my name is Margaret Moreton and welcome to my session. I'm going to explore a new vision of leadership, community engagement and communication and imagine what community-led resilience might actually look like. I'll just share my screen with you and start the slides. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Yunga Bay people, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which the conference is being hosted. I would also like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people of the Wathaurong Nation, the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which I live and work in Torquay in Victoria. And I pay my respects to Indigenous elders past, present and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening to or watching the presentation today. Today's presentation is in the form of a story, and it's based on two principles. Begin with the end in mind, and you can't create something if you can't imagine it. I hope the presentation generates conversation about our future, and I hope communities become involved in that discussion. So the story is called Our Town. I am literally going to read you a story. And this story is told from the future through the eyes of Emily. Emily is 15 years old and lives in our town. She lives with her mother, father and two siblings. They have a dog. Currently, Emily is in year 11 and the year is 2025. So settle in and let's listen to Emily's story. I am Emily and I'm here to talk about our town, how we build our own resilience and deal with emergency events and disasters. Developing this story was the core component of my personal development project for year 10, part of our ethics and community resilience unit, part of social studies and the environment. Our town is in regional Australia. We have a population of just under 20,000 people. We have national parks and forests, a river, farming, wineries, small and medium-sized businesses, and the usual schools, hospitals and housing. We regularly face floods and fires. In 2020, I was 10. I remember the fires of Black Summer. My family evacuated and our home burned down. Our town lost 120 homes. We were devastated. We then had COVID-19. It was a horrible year. I couldn't go to school. My parents had to work from home. We couldn't see my grandparents. It was full on. Finally, a vaccine was found and we were able to go back to school and work. We lost a year of our lives. We lost jobs, money, mental health. One of my grandparents died. We also learned a lot from the experience though, and we still talk about it sometimes. There was a National Bushfire Royal Commission that year into the fires that started the year so badly. They made recommendations for change. Lots of things did change about how we think about ourselves, our families, our economy, our work, and disasters and emergencies. The world we returned to after COVID-19 had changed forever. I'm going to focus on what we learned about how we handle disasters differently. Like most Australian communities, we know that our town has built-in hazards. Our rivers flood, we have bush and farmland that burns, and we have storms. Understanding the hazards that surround us where we live is an important part of our daily life. We've established a local community resilience foundation. This foundation is a community-focused initiative. Lots of people in our community donate. We can donate as little as $500 a year. That's $9.60 a week. Some of our local businesses and our wealthier community members donate lots more than that. The foundation invests the money and funds local resilience projects every year. It's very competitive, and these projects are an exciting way to build our own resilience. We also have a local community resilience organisation. Let's call that the CRO. It coordinates our preparation and planning for emergencies and disasters. There are lots of these organisations across Australia. They're funded by a partnership between federal government and big business. The people employed in the CRO live in our town. Our local CRO helps people prepare their homes and properties properly, and they also help when an emergency happens and after. There's also a national resilience organisation, let's call that the NRO. We have the benefit of both a local organisation of people who live here and the support of a national organisation with lots of access to skilled and knowledgeable people all over the country. We can call on them at any time. Their mantra is that they are here to serve and support us. They too are funded by government and business in partnership. We have a strong group of volunteers across our town, and we have working bees, and we help one another get our homes and properties ready. We also have teams of people who volunteer to care for our rivers, our parks, and our bushlands. Phil is one of our local Indigenous leaders. Let me just get out of Phil's way. There you go. And he and his community coordinate and lead this work to care for country. Phil and the national parks work together. He leads men's cultural burnings in our parks, and his partner Michelle leads women's cool burnings. Phil and Michelle welcome anyone in our town to come and help and be involved in caring for country, and we've all learned so much about country from Phil, Michelle and their community. We have emergency and disaster resilience sessions at school, primary and secondary. We learn about the phases of a crisis and the skills, partnerships and relationships that we need to be strong as a community. Our local emergency services are great. My parents are fully trained volunteers and are taught how to respond to and deal with all likely hazards and emergencies in our community. The training includes knowledge about what we need to do before, during and after a crisis. It also includes some mental health and psychological first aid and information about disaster resilience. Most people I know participate in this training at some stage. It's provided through a partnership between emergency services and the local CRO. It's fun and we feel really good that we know what to do when we need to. We're kind of a sleeper group of trained and skilled volunteers, and we can activate really quickly when an emergency occurs. A national emergency services organisation now exists and supports our local services when events occur. They provide training, resources and information, and they provide emergency services teams if the crisis is too much. The national and local emergency services teams know each other really well. And in our town, we practice. We practice for an emergency event and we practice how we will respond. We also have a local business resilience group made up of local business owners and business leaders. They focus on preparing and learning together, and this includes physical preparation of shops and businesses, but also financial preparation. They have information nights and they bring leading business people to our town to bring ideas from other communities to help keep our economy strong. There's a business mentoring program and the owners love that program. There's a local and national community leadership network. Mum is participating this year and Dad's hoping to do it next year. It too is very competitive. Mum's learning all about community leadership in a crisis and about emergency response and recovery. There are strong relationships that form. Again, the local CRO and the local emergency services are actively involved in the program. Lots of people across Australia have done the program and they have faced similar emergencies and disasters. The program is funded by the NRO. We have emergencies and disasters on TV and in our entertainment and media, not in that old way, you know, where the world is going to end and it's always set in America and people are terrified, or where there are heroes and villains doing brave or the wrong thing. We now see community resilience stories in a new way as part of our ordinary TV and Netflix, movies, documentaries, news, art galleries, theatre, dance. We see examples of strong communities in all of our stories. Indigenous communities are teaching us about the land and the sea and how to maintain a balance. Artists, musicians and performers of all kinds use their talent to support and celebrate our strength and our endurance. There is often some travelling art exhibition, some play or dance performance in our regional arts centre. We all use an online app now. This provides us with information about any weather alerts or emergency or hazards that are happening in our region. If you have a phone, you get an alert. It's a matter of course. Nothing now happens without warning. So all of these elements, excuse me, combine to mean that our town is well prepared and well supported if emergencies happen here. This brings me to our disaster readiness process. In September every year, our town holds a whole month of awareness raising and preparation activity. We check and maintain our smoke alarms, our gutters, our gardens. Working bees happen. Teams of people from the local CRO work together with our Indigenous community groups and volunteers like my parents and me. We visit houses, rivers, bushland, and we all pay our part to get ready and prepare. We have access to a dashboard of information now. This dashboard is online and is also downloadable as an app. An Australian designed this dashboard and we're very proud of it. All sorts of information is there. Local history about what's occurred in the past, asset protection zones and hazard zones that are relevant now, so we can all see what's relevant to where we live, current and predicted weather information, emergencies or incidents that are happening right now, up-to-date information when they do happen, like road closures, swollen rivers, damaged bridges. We have cameras installed in our community near some of the key rivers. This means that we can access the dashboard, look at the cameras and see the water level for ourselves. Our fire trucks have a device installed that means we can see where the trucks are on a live map, just like Uber. There's up-to-date information about evacuation and safe places and what people need to do as things unfold. This dashboard gets better every year as we think of new things, and the maintenance and the updating of this dashboard is funded by the NRO. Once an event is imminent or underway, we all kind of go into automatic. We know what to do, we've practiced, and so we just get on. Some of us know the best thing we can do is, if we have enough warning, is to leave. We don't want emergency services staff and volunteers distracted from the task by us. We know that we'll be more use to everybody if we leave and leave early. Some of our roles include helping others to leave or evacuating animals and pets. As we leave, we activate a sign at the front gate indicating that we've left. Community groups have all been part of the planning for this. People of varied ages and abilities and circumstances are all involved, and we're always ready to swing into gear. We're well coordinated and we keep in touch. We can also adjust our planning depending on what happens next. Trained and skilled evacuation support teams also swing into gear. As people are evacuated, these community members manage and coordinate information, support and care at evacuation centres. Everyone in these teams is trained in psychological first aid and knows how to support people during the crisis. Pets and domestic animals are welcomed and there are facilities already organised. If there's no time to evacuate, we have shelter-in-place plans. Neighbours know how to gather together and shelter in the strongest homes. If we have no choice and it is safer to shelter in place, we understand the likely impact on our properties and we do our best. Some, of course, know that their role is to protect and defend assets, and they do that. We have plans developed that indicate the most precious assets in our town. Some industries and local places are really significant to us, and special teams are deployed to protect those. This includes sacred sites for our local Indigenous community, historic sites and particular businesses and industries. This group also know the value of sheds, equipment and machinery for local primary producers. There's a comprehensive plan for asset protection and it's reviewed annually and we can all get involved. Once the immediate threat passes, each of the organisations and groups go into a second phase of activity. Again, everything is planned and we all know what to do. Sometimes people can't help because they've been impacted or they need time to sort out their own circumstances. There are always some issues that are unexpected and we have to problem solve, but we expect this. So we just get on with it and do our best. A community recovery centre is opened and this is managed by a combination of the local CRO, the local council staff, community organisations and groups and local volunteers. People drop in for a cuppa and find out how everybody's doing, what's happening, how to get some clothes or food, how to connect with one another, what to do about your pets. A vet is usually there in case there's a problem. And we have a kids corner and I help with that. and we just help the kids to draw and chat and just wait for their parents. Depending on the event, a team of people may arrive from the NRO, and their role is to back up and support local teams. They're great. They never take over our process. They just get in behind us as locals and they help. A great innovation is a funding support team. That's part of the NRO. They arrive within 24 hours and they work with local leaders and emergency services. The funding support team already has a list of locals with contact details and occupations. The list has who has kids, who owns a small business, all sorts of stuff. They keep this up to date as a regular part of their business. Like clockwork, the funding support team meets with some local leaders and they go through the list. They map the most affected areas and they confirm with locals the extent of damage that those areas suffered. There's an automatic relief payment that is generated and put into people's bank accounts. That's all processed in 24 to 48 hours. No one has to come into town to get on the list. No one has to tell their story over and over. No one has to wait. An early relief payment goes straight into the bank. A second cascading process then happens to work out who's eligible for further funding and for further support. A process of confirmation is implemented by the local CRO and the funding support team from the NRO, and they just make sure that local information is brought to bear on this process. This second round of relief funding involves the same groups as before, locals and people from the NRO. If there's questions about eligibility, a local will accompany a member of the funding support team. They visit the person or the household or the business. No one has to come in. No one has to repeat their story or do long paperwork. All the paperwork is filled out by the NRO staff and signed by the local. And the second round of relief funding is also then paid. There's a damage stocktake team. Local knowledge is key to this process. And locals partner with the damage stocktake team, also from the NRO. They want to ensure an accurate understanding of the impact of the event and the focus of support that's required. This is all about insurance. So the damage stocktake team liaises and is partly funded by the insurance industry. And this has sped up insurance claims and helps people get back on their feet. Over time, the original Community Recovery Centre changes into a place where you can discuss building, planning, and longer-term recovery issues. Coffee and meals keep getting provided. Local community members, groups and services are more and more visible at the Recovery Centre. A grants team arrives within the first couple of weeks, depending on the scale of the disaster. They too begin to work with local community leaders and the local council. The grants team is also part of the NRO. They actually prepare applications for grants for businesses, community groups, families and individuals. It's been really difficult for people to understand what grants are available and what they're eligible for, and then to do the paperwork. So a database of all available grants has been established within the NRO. All grants are on this database. The grants team recruits locals to work with them. They pay these locals. And together this team matches locals with grants, does all of the paperwork. Short interviews or phone calls occur with the people who will receive the grant. And these can happen out of hours. Everything's really flexible. The process is much easier for the affected community members now. While all of this is happening, our local CRO provides individually focused case management. To anyone who's been affected, anyone in our town can access this case management support. Case managers are trained locals. They visit everyone offering support and a listening ear. If there's a preference for someone who's not local, the NRO can also provide a case manager. They do all sorts of things. They listen to people who just want to talk about what's happened. They provide and gather information. They help people work out what they need to do first, help them make decisions, provide mental health and psychological first aid, and just connect people with other local services that they might need. Of course, community events and social activities happen. These depend on who's affected and who has the energy. We have lots of artists, musicians, choirs, and so on. And so there's concerts and performances. Our local Indigenous community host events. Meals include performers and are a popular disaster recovery activity. Sometimes we invite people from other communities to spend time in our town and share their own experience. Phil, Michelle and Landcare Group, they start to work to restore the national environment pretty quickly. We get involved in repairing the damage to our natural environment, counting animals and species that are lost and then return, monitoring the epicormic regrowth of plants. We work to restore the built environment as well, forming working groups and helping clean up the damaged areas of our community. Sometimes people with necessary skills for using big equipment supervise us. If we work more than 15 hours a week doing this kind of thing, we receive a payment from the government. We sign up at our local CRO and they manage that program. You can't bludge, it's all monitored closely. It just means that some of our local community members can supplement their income by helping restore the community. Researchers from all sorts of universities come to assist us and study the return and regeneration of our natural environment and our community. Some people have got jobs in the past because of what they did during these times. Large corporate business partners also donate funds for vouchers that can be redeemed at local businesses. They sponsor innovation hubs and provide seed funding for creative business ideas across our region. And all sorts of eco and study tours happen in our town. Actually, before and after emergencies, we host photography competitions and tours. Environmental studies, land planning and emergency management courses include practical assignments that focus on our region. All of this is encouraged and it's been built up over years. It means that we learn, but it also brings money into our town. Recovery and preparation begin to merge together as we continually prepare our environment for future events. Once recovery is well underway, we start preparing for the next event, and all of this helps us feel more secure and more connected. Phil and Michelle and the Indigenous community have also set up their own Indigenous tourism business. They run tourist trips and tours all over our region. People come from all over Australia to spend time with Phil, Michelle and their community, to listen to their wisdom and knowledge, to join men and women's weekends, and to learn from them and their community. We have won lots of awards in our town because of Phil, Michelle and their community. We have a great relationship and a great relationship with the recovering land and the natural environment. We're really proud of how we work together. Since 2020, we've learned a lot and we've changed how we think and behave when it comes to emergencies and our own resilience. We know we're vulnerable, all of us. We have to take care of one another and ourselves in the face of a sometimes fierce environment. But we also know we're strong, individually and collectively. We can survive, we rebuild, we help one another. Governments, non-government organisations and businesses have all realised that they support us. They employ locals, and this has helped our local economy. We know we're responsible for the way we live and the way we care for our environment, and we're learning from our Indigenous Australians. We're resilient, and towns and regions across Australia are resilient too. We have confidence and hope in our future. So, thanks for listening to Emily's story. I hope you feel inspired enough to talk about some of these ideas and to generate some more. Let's do something to change how we do disasters. My details are there. I hope people will contact me, and I hope to be in the hub once I find out how to do that for conversations. And Megan is the graphic artist who lives in Victoria and was affected along with her family when they lost their home in 2009. And I'm delighted to profile Megan's work in this presentation as well. Thank you very much, and hopefully we have time for questions.